Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm here with my fellow Democrats to talk about a simple fix to a problem that costs businesses billions of dollars per year. That's sick employees on the job. According to a 2011 study by the Institute for Women's Policy Research, more than 1 million Michigan workers cannot take sick leave when they are ill or when they have to take care for a sick child or relative. That's nearly half of all private sector workers in the state. When you're not feeling well, you don't do your best work, and that loss in productivity adds up to $160 billion a year. Having sick workers stay home and get well should be the goal of all businesses and employees alike. Everyone wins when workers don't have to choose between a paycheck and getting better or caring for a sick family member. When young families choose to stay in Michigan or to leave, they look for a competitive work environment. That's why I partnered with my colleagues in the House to introduce legislation that would require employers to allow workers to accrue 1 hour of sick leave for every 30 hours they work, regardless of whether they work full or part-time. Under the bill, workers would be allowed to take earned time off due to their own illness, as well as illness for a close family member. No one should have to make the difficult decision of choosing between their personal and family health or a paycheck. And with the passage of paid sick day legislation, they won't have to. I'm turning it over to State Representatives Stephanie Chang to give you more information.
Thank you, Senator Ananich. My House colleagues and I are really looking forward to working with you to make this legislation a reality here in Michigan for Michigan families. My name is Stephanie Chang, and I'm the state representative for House District 6, which is Detroit along the river and River Region E-Course. So this is the reality for many hardworking Michigan families. Workers who do not have paid sick leave are going to work sick. Parents who can't take time off are sending their sick child to school or to childcare. People who are battling serious illnesses are working while sick when they need the time off to take treatment and to recover. They do this because their employers do not offer paid sick leave. And if they get sick and they don't come into work, they don't get paid. So why not use vacation days, some people might ask. If they get paid vacation days, they're probably already using them to cover an illness. Or what's more likely is they also don't accumulate paid vacation days. So this situation doesn't help the worker, and it doesn't help the rest of us either. When a sick coworker comes into work, or a restaurant cook or server is forced to work while sick because he or she can't afford to take time off, we are all at greater risk for getting sick. According to research done by the National Opinion Research Center at the University of Chicago, parents without paid sick days are more than twice as likely as parents with paid sick days to send a sick child to school or daycare. Even people battling serious illnesses have to work while they are undergoing treatments if they don't have paid sick leave. This isn't good for these workers, and it isn't good for the employer because we all know how our productivity takes a dive when you're sick and trying to work. It only gets worse if, for example, the flu spreads around a workplace because workers couldn't stay home to recover. Offering paid sick leave to workers is just common sense. So how big a problem is this in Michigan? More than 1.5 million workers, about 46% of the private sector workforce, aren't able to take a paid sick day. It's time to change this, and that is why we are introducing bills in the House and Senate to require employers to allow full and part-time workers to accumulate paid sick leave. So these bills would require employers to set aside 1 hour of paid sick leave for every 30 hours an employee works, like Senator Ananich said, regardless if you're part-time or full-time. This bill would also stipulate when a worker could use this earned time off, including their own illness, the illness of a close family member, or recovery after a violent crime. This bill would protect all Michigan families, including LGBT families, grandparents raising grandchildren, domestic partners raising children, and single-parent families. These bills would apply to all employers with a carve-out for employer with less than 10 employees. So these are common sense provisions that will help keep workers healthy, on the job, and productive. By allowing the paid sick leave to accumulate over time, it won't be a financial hardship for any employer. Paid sick leave will make a huge difference in the lives of working women and families. Paid sick leave would mean that working women won't lose money out of their paycheck because they have to miss work to care for themselves or a sick child. Without paid sick leave, too many families risk falling into poverty when a family member gets sick. Paid sick leave would help prevent that by making sure that working mothers don't have to worry about losing their jobs or a significant amount of their pay because of an illness. No one wants to get sick and miss work, but it happens, and we shouldn't penalize working women, men, and their families because of an illness they can't prevent. And now I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Representative Erika Geiss, to talk about the need for paid sick leave.
Thank you, Representative Chang. I'm Erika Geiss, and I represent House District 12, so all of Taylor, Romulus, and part of Van Buren Township. Yesterday, as I'm sure many of you know, the Federal Family Medical Leave Act turned 22 years old. When that law was passed, it was a huge step forward for a worker facing a serious illness or a worker dealing with a seriously ill family member, because it meant they could take their time off to care for that person without the fear of losing their job. But the FMLA does not require employers to pay workers for their time off. And under FMLA, it doesn't address all health situations. To use the provisions of FMLA, you have to work for a covered employer. Generally, FMLA applies to private employers except for those with fewer than 50 employees, and those workers must also meet certain other qualifications to be covered by FMLA. FMLA takes an important first step, but now we must go further, and that's why my colleagues here in Michigan are offering bills in the House and the Senate. We need to join the other states and local governments that are passing bills and local ordinances requiring employers to offer paid sick leave to employees. We've seen enough health scares in recent years to understand the wisdom of paid sick leave. Many of us get flu shots, but for example, the H1N1 flu virus can be deadly to the elderly, the very young, and those with diseases that compromise their immune systems. So, as we all know, if you are ill, if you have the flu, it makes sense to stay home. It makes sense for stick workers to stay home, and they would if they knew that they wouldn't lose pay by doing so. Parents would keep ill kids home if they knew they wouldn't be penalized financially. FMLA gave us a good start to address the needs of families dealing with illness. Now it's time for us to take the next step and do what's right for workers, employers, and the general public when it comes to any kind of illness. Allowing workers to accumulate 1 hour of paid sick leave for every 30 hours of work is the right thing to do in Michigan.